everyone, and welcome back to Full Throttle Finance, a financial literacy podcast geared towards dissecting complex financial topics into fun, relatable discussions. I am Felicia, and I am the CEO at Clean Me Consulting, and with me is Allison, who is our senior bookkeeper. Together, we focus on revving up the financial foundations for athletes, entrepreneurs, and leaders in business. Regardless if you're operating from an established program already or if you're just starting out, we are here to help you make small shifts that drive better financial performance.
Thanks, Felicia. And in case you missed it in our previous episode, we talked about all the chaos that comes alongside being a bookkeeper or a small business during the month of January. We also dove deep into some important tax forms and their deadlines, like the employee W-2 and various 1099 contractor forms. So hopefully you stayed on top of yours.
It's January 31st, so they are due today.
Yeah. Today, we're going to discuss crucial topics for any business, the difference between the accrual basis and cash basis accounting methods, and how to choose the right method for your business. We know this may not be the most exciting topic for everyone. We just want to make this more relatable.
Yep, we're going to try our best to make it fun.
Yep.
So that's right, Allison. I do think that it's a very important topic. And honestly, it's one of the first discovery questions that we ask our clients during the consultation process, right? We ask them, do you use the accrual or the cash basis accounting method? And I'd say probably somewhere like 75% of our clients, usually, they can't answer that question confidently because they don't really know what the difference between the two methods are. Or maybe it's even their first time that they've ever heard either of those terms ever before in their lives, which I don't blame them, right? They're not finance experts, but the reporting insights that you can levy from your financial data, depending upon which method you use, or maybe a hybrid method, it varies widely.
That's right, Felicia. So let me start by defining this for our listeners so that we're all on the same page here. The cash basis method recognizes income and expenses when the money physically hits or leaves the bank account. It's straightforward, but it might not always give you the clearest picture of your financial performance. The accrual basis method recognizes income and expenses when they are earned or incurred. It doesn't matter when the money is actually received or paid because they both are tied to the period in which the service was performed or sale occurred.
Exactly. That's absolutely correct, Allison. So for our listeners who are in motorsports, you can think of it like this. Cash basis is very similar to if you were to go an entire day of testing and you only checked your metrics maybe one single point in time. Whereas your accrual basis is more like tracking your fuel efficiency over the entire day of testing or over an entire race. So making the decision of which accounting method that is best for your individual situation is definitely not something to be taken lightly. And it's definitely a discussion you should have with your tax preparer because you can't just switch whenever it's more convenient for you, right? You pick a method and you stay and you stick with that method. Your tax expert might even want to follow something that's called a hybrid method, which is similar to what we do for our own books here at Clean Me Consulting. This really allows your tax strategist to really strategize with you and make sure that you are filing on the correct method or that you can stay ahead of maybe switching from the cash to accrual basis as your revenue increases. And so, Allison, I think it would be fun to talk about maybe some different types of motorsport industry business models and maybe how each of those different models might align with various accounting methods. Let's start with somebody like an individual, like a social media manager, maybe that might be working on multiple different contracts with different race teams in a paddock. Like, what would your top level analysis look like for this kind of a business?
Felicia, since it's an individual and not a marketing agency, their revenue might not warrant a full-blown accrual method, so they might not benefit best from filing their taxes on the cash basis. But on the other hand, since you mentioned working with a contract, they likely perform monthly retainer services for clients. Their internal benefit, like knowing peak seasons or commitments, They might benefit from tracking their data on the accrual basis so they can tie the actual workload to the period in which it was performed, not necessarily when they receive the payment in exchange for that labor.
I agree, Allison. I think that this type of business model would definitely benefit from hybrid reporting, like what we do with our own bookkeeping at Clean Me Consulting. And with the modern day financial reporting system, something like QuickBooks, it's actually super easy to do. We do this for our clients too, right? We have a couple of them that we have on a hybrid method. We date the invoice as of the last day of the month where the services were performed, and we just toggle between the cash and the accrual method with like 2 clicks in QuickBooks, and it gives us very different report data, right? So when we're toggled on the accrual basis, we'll see it in the period in which the service was performed. But then when we switch it to cash basis, when we go to file our firm's tax returns, we only see the income and the expenses in the period which the money hit and left the bank. So we get the best of both worlds when we set this hybrid model up for us, right? And it's important for us because we're tying those services to a certain period, just like our example of a social media manager who has contracts. They're likely getting paid monthly and they want to tie that revenue and that labor to a certain period. This helps us learn our peak busy seasons, and toggling between the methods really helps us understand what our actual cash flow is and the number of days that it takes for us to collect on our outstanding receivables, our outstanding revenue that we haven't collected yet.
Right, exactly, Felicia. And can you please talk about the difference between an individual operating more like a freelancer, providing like social media services versus like a full blown marketing agency that might be providing more in depth services?
That's a good question, Allison. So, like a full blown marketing agency they might be handling a larger scope of work for their clients. There's likely more labor, maybe additional employees, not just one solo person. And this directly correlates to larger gross revenue numbers. And so, in my eyes, a marketing agency like that should most certainly be tracking their revenue on an accrual basis and probably even filing their taxes on an accrual basis as well too, depending upon what the net income looks like after all of those deductible expenses, because those contracts are just much larger dollar amounts typically versus an individual, a freelancer who you might still be paying them a decent amount of money, but there's not this big moving picture that's going on around them. It's just one person that you're dealing with instead of an agency, maybe putting on events in your paddock and having a staff of employees that are coming out to help you
Yeah.
work it out the track.
Felicia, on the topic of internal hybrid reporting, can you provide some examples of other motorsport related businesses that could benefit from this type of reporting?
Yeah, I think rider and driver coaches are a good one. Engineers, athletic trainers, hospitality vendors, event coordinators, those kinds of trades and professions, they all might perform like consistent or at least events that are consistent with specific time frames in event. So knowing the period where the work actually ties to, not just when the money hits the bank, is super helpful for all of those individuals. And hybrid reporting can help plan for things like staffing and scheduling and pricing during peak seasons as well too. If you're a hot commodity and it's more difficult to book with you during busy season, like you
Right.
want to know that so that you can charge accordingly for that.
And Felicia, the hybrid reporting can also be helpful for retainers or prepayments too, right? Say a videographer requires payment upfront to help with a 3 month preseason marketing campaign for a race team, and they take $9,000 deposit in December with work to schedule in the following February. Depending on how the videographer files taxes, cash or accrual basis, the outcomes are very different. One's going to record $9,000 worth of income in the current year with 2 months of labor left to perform. The one only records $3,000 worth of income in the current year, tying it directly to the labor performed. So Using a hybrid accrual cash model can help them strategize with their tax professionals to determine the best filing method if they're continuously taking on multi-month contracts and taking payments to produce work.
Exactly, Allison. Now, there's some models that I'd say really should follow a full accrual accounting method, like full on race teams, right? Race programs are already operating within very strict budgets. You need a tangible way to compare your data year over year and to compare your current year data against the budget that you projected. And you want to make sure that, like, the expenses you accounted for August, let's say, line up with the actual expenses that happened in August so that you can compare that data. The easiest way to get that kind of data is to implement accrual accounting methods and assigning your expenses and your revenue to the period where the work was actually performed, not when the money hit the bank.
Well, and that's tire vendors too, right, Felicia? They have inventory and like they have e-commerce retail aspect to the multi-moving components. It would be important to differentiate between their different sales sources in person versus online. But I imagine it would be beneficial to tie them to the period in which the sale occurred, regardless of it was sold, especially dealing with crazy e-commerce reporting.
So I agree. Listen, likewise, some business models I think really might not need anything more than cash basis. And I think some of those might be like some athlete, depending upon what the athlete has going on for their own personal sponsorships and their own other individual revenue. But also, I think repair shops, custom made to order manufacturing, like, helmet wraps or pop up tents that are custom made for your organization, track day organizations too, and other just like one time event and one type service companies. Like, if it's not consistently happening over time, then you might benefit from cash basis, or like cash basis might be all that you need rather when the money comes in and when the money leaves the bank, because you don't have these contracts, you don't have these scopes of work that span multiple periods. It's just what's happening right here, right now. So choosing between the accrual and the cash basis is really a decision that has long-term implications. And once you choose a method for tax purposes, you can't just switch back and forth when it benefits you most. You can switch. There's a form that has to be filed with the government, and you really just want to make sure that it's a sound decision and that it's definitely something your tax preparer should be involved with in that decision-making process.
Just like in accounting, they teach consistency is key. And that's why it's critical to collaborate with your tax preparer or financial advisor. They can help you evaluate which method aligns with your business and needs. And to our audience, if you're on the fence about your particular situation or want to know how moving to a hybrid reporting model for your own organization's internal metrics might be beneficial, reach out. Love to discuss your business needs and your goals.
Well, Allison, we talked a lot about accrual and cash basis accounting methods today, like what the difference is and what types of methods you might typically see across different types of motorsport industry businesses. We talk a bit more about these accounting methods in our newest educational course, Revving Up for Financial Success, which is available for purchase on our website, and we'll drop the link in our show notes as well too. It's a very important topic, and we want to make sure that you guys really understand what the difference is between the two accounting methods.
And we really hope that you guys are enjoying this. We appreciate you tuning in and taking steps to strengthen your financial foundations. If you found today's insights valuable, be sure to subscribe and join us next week as we continue to break down finances with a motorsport twist. If you're interested in booking services with us directly, visit cleanbeeconsulting.com. That's CLEANBEE consulting.com. To schedule your next consultation, we'll see you next Friday.